Lara Nassar is a former physician who was also the team doctor for the U.S. Women's Olympic Gymnastics team. Claims of sexual abuse swirled up in 2017 when some of its victims finally spoke up. Not only were claims of abuse brought up by the gymnasts of the U.S. Olympic team, but criminal sexual conduct from Nassar also took place at Michigan State University, as he was previously employed there. Nassar is an abuser, molester, and rapist against hundreds of innocent women, and who was in the end called out by many of those scarred victims, including the gymnasts he took control over for many years. On June 8, 2022, CNN Wire explained in Global Issues, quote, "The claimants include Olympic gymnasts Simone Biles, Aly Raisman, and Michaela Maroney, and World Championship medalist Maggie Nichols." Once only a few young women decided to speak out about their horrific experiences with Nassar, it continuously encouraged more and more of his victims to let out their anger and say their piece in the courtroom. In an article authored by Christina Karen, she talks about Maggie Nichols being the first victim to speak up. Maggie Nichols' mother, Gina Nichols, claimed in a phone interview that Maggie was told to keep quiet and that USA Gymnastics had the situation under control. On January 10, 2018, New York Times said in Global Issues, quote, "My back was really hurting me. I couldn't even really bend down. And I remember he took me into the training room, closed the door, and closed the blinds," she said. "I trusted what he was doing at first, but then he started touching me in places I didn't really think he should. He didn't have gloves on and didn't tell me what he was doing," Maggie Nichols said in an interview. Besides the process of dealing with Nassar's case and hearing out each of his victims that spoke up, anger grew tremendously when the FBI mishandled the court case. On June 8, 2022, Matt Bonesteel exerts in his article, "Gymnasts Sue FBI for $1 billion over mishandling of Larry Nassar case," that, quote, "The women are collectively seeking more than $1 billion from the FBI in a lawsuit filed under the Federal Tort Claims Act, a 1946 law that makes the United States liable for injuries caused by the negligent or wrongful act or omission of any employee of the government while acting within the scope of his office or employment." Alongside Nassar, the FBI allowed for the sexual abuse and more to torture these young women for way too long. On June 8, 2022, CNN news source Sales stated, quote, "The FBI was grossly derelict in their duties by declining to interview gymnasts who were willing to talk about the abuse, failing to transfer the complaint to Lansing, Michigan, where Nassar was continuing to abuse girls, ignoring its obligation to report child abuse to relevant state and federal agencies, and lying to Congress, the media, and FBI headquarters about their lack of diligence in investigating the Nassar complaint," attorneys for the victims said in a statement. Bella and Marta Caroli, former coaches of the U.S. Women's Olympic Gymnastics team, are also former hosts of an annual summer camp. This annual summer camp was hosted at the USA Gymnastics National Training Center, which is also known, or was known at the time, as Caroli Ranch. This training center is where a majority of the sexual acts transpired. This is a building that the gymnasts would walk into every day, where they are supposed to feel safe and at home. This is inside the building where most of these acts transpired. This is Bella and Marta Caroli, the former coaches, who turned a blind eye when all of this was happening. And this is Larry Nassar, the man who tortured all of these women for way too long. Governor Greg Abbott set in place a criminal investigation to be had at the ranch. According to an article published on January 31st, 2018, authored by WashingtonPost.com, Abbott announced, quote, "The public statements made by these athletes who previously trained at the Caroli Ranch are gut-wrenching. After the horrifying abuse that the gymnasts dealt with, they were almost forced to go back to training at the ranch until the camp was finally called off for good. On January 19th, People news article explained that in the Michigan courtroom, Allie Raisman, quote, excoriated Nassar and took aim at the gymnastics organizations that she said enabled the former doctor to abuse hundreds of young girls and women under the guise of medical treatment. After a long-awaited court case, Nassar was finally handed over consequences to his actions. CQ Roll Call explained in their Today article on January 25, 2018, quote, the former USA gymnastics doctor and longtime school employee was sentenced to up to 175 years behind bars. Years of what was supposed to be fun and safe memories for the gymnast and many other victims outside of USA Gymnastics were completely stripped away. Judge Rosemary Aquilina, the judge that ruled the court case, used some of Larry Gerard Nassar's last few moments in the outside world to brutally yet gladly say, according to Today news article on January 25, 2018, quote, I have just signed your death warrant.